Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about sneaky signs that you're dating an avoidant.
Sneaky, sneaky.
You know, one of the things that many people learn when they come to the channel is that people have different attachment styles and they act differently in their relationships. So many of you are finding out for the first time that you were dating an avoidant. There's so much more info out there than even a couple of years ago when it was hardly talked about at all.
Now it's all the time.
Now people are more likely to at least heard the term before they come to our channel. But it can be confusing to find out that you were dating an avoidant, especially if it's in like that first year or less, right? Because what we have seen time and time again is that avoidant people often look great for those first 5 to 6 months.
And when you're trying to determine someone's attachment style, right, we can only work with what we're given. So if somebody is presenting this very secure version of themselves, they are not attached to you yet in the first couple months, in the first couple weeks, first couple dates. So that's just what you're going to see. That's all you're going to have to work with. And you might assume automatically that they're secure. We have another video that talks about avoidance coming off very secure in the beginning.
Yes.
So if this topic interests you, that video would also be super helpful to watch.
Now, one of the other things that goes along with what you're saying is that, first of all, the avoidants don't give you much information. And the information they give is often inaccurate. Okay? In other words, though, it's kind of like you're asking a blind person to describe what they saw at the crime, right? They're not going to give you a detailed description of what they saw. So here's an example. An avoidant might be like, I had a great childhood. I have such a good relationship with my mom. But then you find out their mom was an alcoholic. They were abusive. They were neglectful. And the avoidant swept those things under the rug. And so they describe it as, oh, I have a good relationship with my mom.
Right? And this is why it's really, really, really important to listen, right? Because they might withhold some information there in the beginning or kind of distort some things just based on their perspective. But there might be other moments where they do show you a lot of vulnerability. So there might be moments where they talk a little bit more about their family, and they might even talk about themselves, the way they handle emotions. And it's really important to know what to look for. You might hear avoidants say phrases like, I tend to push people away.
I'm not good in relationships.
And they just sandwich this in between other things that they're saying.
By the way, I'm bipolar.
So it does come out like that sometimes.
You okay? Are you coughing? I'm not fine. It's just
keep
that I'm
your eyes
bipolar. And
you have to keep your eyes open and your ears open.
and it's not, I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not much of a stretch.
Sometimes it's not that far off, honestly.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Oh,
and they'll say, well, I told you.
Yeah, I told you both my parents were alcoholics and my dad's still in prison for murder. I said that. I mean, but they often say it in a way like, and it happens so quick, and then they go on to something else, so you don't really think about the information and process it.
Or we're also justifying this in our own mind. Well, they're being so open and vulnerable, but they also said that they don't have feelings and that they act robotic or they feel like a robot sometimes.
Yeah.
So these are some other things that you might hear. Just keep your ears open. Something else you might hear is, it's hard for me to get close to others, or I tend to shut down. And so in the beginning, they have nothing to shut down about. You're an arm's length away. You know, there's enough distance for them to feel comfortable. When people with avoidant attachment styles shut down is when they are faced with that closeness.
Yes.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah. So as you get closer, and now there's more responsibilities, obligations, commitments, that is when they are more likely to shut down and run away. Okay. But in the beginning, they often look so good. They're telling you everything they want to hear. I mean, I've never felt this way before. I want to marry you. I want to have kids with you. And then they're breaking up with you for no reason.
Yeah.
So one of the things you want to do is you want to look at their relationship history. Guys, you have to take things slow. If you rush into relationships with people you don't really know, you're going to wind up with a lot of broken hearts. Look closer. Look beyond those first few statements. And don't just take all of those statements as truth. In other words, when they start telling you about all their partners that have cheated on them, you got to know that there's another side to that story, and that the information may be telling you may not be truthful. But people will often act like they're just telling you these horror stories that have happened to them. Oh, that poor person, and you feel bad for them, and then you come to find out when their family messages you that don't trust them, they attacked me and my daughter and whatever.
Right. Or, I mean, the opposite side of that is they could be telling the truth, but from their perspective. So, like you had said, there's always three sides to the story,
That's right.
right? One person's, the other person's, and then the truth. And so just keep that in mind, that our perception shapes the way we communicate, shapes the way we share information. So factor that into what you're hearing.
And make sure the information lines up. Because sometimes they'll say it one way, and then you hear that story a little bit down the road, and it's not quite the same way, and it seems like facts are changing, right? So you want to take a look at those things. You want to look at their relationship history. It's very important to really get to know what they are like, because they're going to let those things out a little bit. If they've had a string of short-term relationships where they're barely getting past 3 or 4 months, I had a call recently, all their relationships were only like 4 months long. I'm like, come on. They say they're going to marry you. They don't even know you. And, I'm sure they're avoidant,
The other side of it is sometimes there are longer term relationships that somebody who's avoidant might have had, but maybe it was a long distance relationship.
True.
So there was some kind of barrier to their closeness. Or sometimes you even hear avoidants who have been married for a long, long time. But when you dig into what their marriage looked like, maybe one was like a flight attendant and the other one was, doing some of their own individualistic things. So they might have had longer term relationships, but very individualistic kind of a relationship.
And sometimes they've had long-term relationships, but they were miserable together for a long time.
Right. Or there was somebody else
in
the picture. So just, keep all of these things in mind. One of the most important things is you don't want to make judgments until you get to know a person better. And this is really the point that we're trying to drive home here, because we know how powerful a first impression can be. And when we're on that first date, we go in with our checklist, right? We've probably done this exercise in therapy a million times, writing down the traits that we want to see in a partner. So we walk into this first date and this person leaves an incredible impression. Man, they talked about this point, and they know about attachment styles even. And, they've been in a long-term relationship. And so sometimes this first impression can sort of morph the way that we see them moving forward as we continue to get to know them, right? We already have an idea of who they are, a belief about who they are. And so if there's some behaviors that pop up when we get closer or more attached, then we can start to justify it. Let's say there's a time where they're super talkative and open in the beginning, but then the two of you have a conflict and they don't message you for a week. Right? You can say, well, typically they talk a lot and they're very good with communication, and maybe they just had a bad week.
Yeah.
Right? And so we start to justify things based on our initial perception of them rather than factoring in everything as part of
That's right.
Our experience with them.
You have to incorporate the new information into how you see them.
Right. And a lot of us make early judgments on someone, and we kind of stamp that in our mind about who they are. And so then later when things come out, we're surprised, we don't believe it, we make up excuses or justifications. So just take things as they are and be mindful of this pattern. When we're in love, it's almost like we're hypnotized. So I understand.
Yeah. And, in the beginning, when it's a lot easier because you're so excited about them and there's a lot of lust and passion, it's easier for both people, right? But over time, it's not so exciting to see somebody, and maybe they do start to do things to annoy you, or vice versa, or whatever. But you're going to see that when you try and get closer to them, they may pull away, they may push you away, they start to do little things to avoid that connection, right? So you're going to see them start to do little things, like maybe you go away for the weekend together, and then when you come back, they start to act more distant. And you're like, I don't get it. I thought we had a great time together. Or maybe you plan on meeting each other's family. And so, they meet your family, and then all of a sudden afterwards, they're a little bit distant. And you're like, I guess they didn't like my family, or what happened there? I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so there might be some things that they do earlier on that you notice some of these kind of distancing or intimacy aversive kind of behaviors happening. So it's hard because there's not going to be just like a badge on all of us that says anxious, avoidant, secure, disorganized, right? And we
Unless I created a dating website.
which a lot of people are asking you to do.
I know, it's true. I need a lot of funding to do something like that.
That's true. And even how we would, say who's
mandatory, you have to do the creative healing course.
Yeah, right. Interviews with us.
Interviews. Yeah, we don't have the staffing power to pull that off.
No. But remember that avoidance, that attachment styles, right? We're talking about a spectrum here. We're talking about people who are really complex. So we can't just think, oh man, this person showed a couple avoidant traits. They're avoidant. I'm not going to pursue this anymore. And I see a lot of you in the comments have a lot of negative feelings towards people who are avoidant. You'll say, I'm never dating an avoidant again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it can be difficult to find out until you're attached and until they're attached.
And unless you get to a truly secure place, you're going to wind up dating more avoidance. You just don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
Because only when you get to a place that you're truly secure are you able to spot them and say, uh-oh, I better be careful.
Right. And that's a big part of it, is being able to say no when things aren't working for you anymore. Right. Yeah. And just as I was saying, avoidance can be a spectrum. There might be some avoidant traits in a partner. There might be some anxious traits in a partner. It's all about, being willing to work with this person up to however your limit looks like. These are all personal decisions.
Let me add to that. Avoidant people are very anxious. Okay? A lot of people don't think that they're anxious. Yeah. They think, oh no, they're not anxious, they're just avoidant. No, they are anxious as well. It's just that they're so anxious that they just don't trust people, and they tend to give up easier, and they tend to walk away easier, and they tend to be more avoidant. Whereas the anxious person doesn't like a lot of space. The avoidant has probably been so neglected, mistreated, abused, that it's safer to have that space than to have the connection.
Exactly. And it can manifest very differently in different people, right? And so you really have to keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and just know that if you're in a situation that doesn't suit you, you have the confidence to be able to get out of that situation. And you also have the confidence to be able to protect your heart. So I know a lot of you are trying to mitigate that hurt, and that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Educate yourself on what attachment styles look like. Educate yourself on secure attachment, focusing on the things that you do want to see in a partner, things that you like to see. And also work on that trust on yourself, being able to trust your intuition, being able to trust your ability to leave situations that don't work for you or that are harmful or could be potentially harmful, or have those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. We have a playlist called Understanding Attachment Styles. Talks a lot about the different attachment styles. The Creative Healing course especially talks about the attachment styles. And there's a couple sections just on avoidant alone, in depth, that helps you really see these things. Because, who you date, no matter who it is, they're going to have some issues. They're going to do some things that are frustrating or lead to arguing. But the more that you understand these issues, like attachment styles, communication issues, needs, all these kind of things that we're always sharing, the more you can internalize how to navigate in a way that is more patient and understanding and empathetic, and the more likely you're going to be able to stay and work through those difficult challenges.
Exactly. I feel like this video has a disclaimer. If you or a loved one has been personally victimized by an avoidant.
This sounds like a medication ad.
Yeah, right.
Try Avoid No More. With Avoid No More, once a day, you may be experiencing lots of diarrhea, which you would have anyway if you were dating an avoidant.
Side effects include intense feelings of joy, willing to live,
closeness to people that want to be around you.
We're kidding.
Of course, yeah, we're joking around.
But yes, avoidance is a scale. You might see some avoidant traits. Overall, you want to be able to, increase your ability to notice these things, increase your trust in yourself, and be able to have relationships with other people, be able to enjoy closeness with other people. Yeah. So that's our hope for you.
The more you educate yourself on this, the more likely you're going to steer away from people that are avoidant, if that's what you want.
Avoid no more.
Avoid no more. Or try Avoid No More. Once a day. And keeps the avoidance away.
I wish.
All right, so hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askgreg.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm also here. We love avoidance too. I just want to put that out there.
We do. We're just having some fun. Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.